Hello and welcome to my next class, Wildlife Population Dynamics. Well, it is actually not in continuation with genetic parameters, and it's not genetic parameters part 3 as promised earlier, so I apologize for it, but it's for good because the class of mine is being put on population dynamics, wildlife population dynamics solely for the students of Marathi Veterinary College, on demand of Marathi Veterinary College, but meant for all of you who would like to see it online on YouTube. Anyways, coming to the topic today which I have put it, I'll definitely be uploading genetic parameter part 3 soon for my students. Well, the students, the topic today I would be dealing with is wildlife population dynamics. So the content which I would be taking in this is what is population dynamics, what are the components of population dynamics, types of population growth curves, effective population size, captive breeding, conservation, and of course the important questions at last, which I try to do in every lecture of mine. Now coming to the first screen, I think I should go for full screen mode now for better visibility. Few of the contents have been actually written by me and then screenshot taken and then actually put on it because I think we due to paucity of time, and I think few of the symbols are very difficult to be inserted in genetics. Anyways, coming back to it, the population dynamics is necessary to be studied, students, because no population is ever the same from one year to the next. And if we really want to know the status of the population, whether it needs to be conserved, whether it is threatened, we really need to know about the population on and whole. So study of population dynamics is essential. Population. So let us first know the definition of population. You all have read the different definitions of population, right? In statistics it was different, in breeding it was different. Now you will say that ma'am is giving us another definition of population. Well, population is traditionally referred to as the number of individuals of a particular species within a given locality as a population. The term dynamics, together they constitute population dynamics. Term dynamics is used to describe the shift in the number and composition of individual over time. And so why do we need to study the concept of population dynamics? Many management objectives can be accomplished by manipulating the habitat. So if we want to have many of the managemental works or objectives accomplished, we need to know about the population dynamics. Second, the habitat component and animal space requirement determine the carrying capacity of the wildlife. And third, few of the density dependent factors like birth rate and growth rate also determined by the population dynamics. All these terms like density dependent, carrying capacity will be dealt in this lecture only subsequently. So I would like to explain the concept that why do we need to study the concept of population dynamics in Hindi for all of you to understand. Population dynamics हम लोगों को इसलिए पढ़ना ज़रूरी होता है. डायनेमिक्स मतलब पॉपुलेशन के डिफरेंट पैरामीटर्स टेकन टुगेदर, उसमें ग्रोथ कितनी हुई है, उसमें बर्थ रेट कितनी हुई है, उसमें डेथ रेट कितनी हुई है, उसकी डेंसिटी क्या है पॉपुलेशन की, एमिग्रेशन एंड सो ऑन, मोर्टेलिटी कितनी है. अगर इतनी सारी चीज़ों को अगर हम लोग इन होल या पार्ट स्टडी करते हैं, मतलब हम लोग पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स स्टडी कर रहे हैं. मतलब जब हम लोग पॉपुलेशन के डायनेमिक्स को स्टडी करते हैं, यानी समय के साथ पॉपुलेशन में कितना बदलाव आया है उसके नंबर और कॉम्पोजिशन में, अगर हम लोग उसको पढ़ते हैं मतलब हम लोग पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स पढ़ते हैं. सो व्हेन वी स्टडी द चेंज ऑफ पॉपुलेशन in its with respect to change in its number and composition of individual over time, we study population dynamics. जब किसी भी population को हम लोग उसके नंबर या टाइम के साथ उसके नंबर में या उसके कॉम्पोजिशन में चेंज को हम लोग स्टडी करते हैं कि समय के साथ उसमें कितना बदलाव आया है, तो हम लोग पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स पढ़ रहे हैं. तो हम लोगों को पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स इसलिए जानने की ज़रूरत है क्योंकि अगर हम लोगों को ये जानना है कि क्या कोई स्पीशीज़ को कंजर्वेशन की ज़रूरत है या नहीं, क्या कोई स्पीशीज़ एक्सटिंक्ट हो रहा है या नहीं, या फिर तो इसके लिए हमें ये जानना ज़रूरी है कि पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स उस स्पीशीज़ की क्या है. सेकंड, अगर हम लोगों को मान लीजिए ये जानना है कि बर्थ रेट या डेथ रेट आगे क्या होगा, बहुत सारे ऐसे फैक्टर्स हैं जैसे पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स के, जैसे बर्थ रेट या डेथ रेट, जो कि उसके पॉपुलेशन पे डिपेंड करते हैं, पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी पे डिपेंड करते हैं. ऐसे फैक्टर्स समय के साथ कितने बदलेंगे नहीं बदलेंगे, ये प्रेडिक्ट करने के लिए भी पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स जानने की ज़रूरत है. overall the most important point or objective of population dynamics, I feel, is to study the status of population, whether it is safe or its survivability is safe or not in due course of time. So we study population dynamics. Now population dynamics over here, again the definition is that it is the branch of life sciences that studies the size and age composition of population as dynamical system and the biological and environmental processes deriving them, such as birth and death rate, and by emigration and immigration. Well, this definition does look tough. I got it from the literature. It is a concept which has all the meaning. So explaining it, I would like to say that population dynamics लाइफ साइंसेस का ऐसा ब्रांच है जिसमें हम लोग ये पढ़ते हैं कि किसी भी पॉपुलेशन के साइज़ में या उसके एज कॉम्पोजिशन में, यानी यंग एज के कितने हैं, ओल्ड एज के कितने हैं, उसमें कितना बदलाव आया है और उससे रिलेटेड बर्थ रेट या डेथ रेट या इमिग्रेशन कुल मिलाकर कितने हुए हैं और उसकी वजह से उसमें कितना बदलाव आया है उसके नंबर और कॉम्पोजिशन में, तो हम लोग पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स पढ़ रहे हैं. The first principle of population dynamics to be studied was the exponential law of Malthus as modeled by the Malthusian growth model. The three dynamic rate functions, natality or the birth rate means reaching a certain or reproductive size or reproductive stage, population growth rate, mortality. So if n1 is the number of individual at time 1, यानी कि अगर हम लोग पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स पढ़ रहे हैं और हम लोगों को जानना है कि टोटल पॉपुलेशन उसका नंबर क्या है, तो कैसे निकालेंगे? तो किसी भी समय में एट एनी टाइम 1, इफ़ n1 इज़ द नंबर ऑफ इंडिविजुअल, इट विल बी गिवन एट n0. पहले क्या था n0? मतलब पहले उसकी आबादी क्या थी, प्लस b यानी बर्थ, d यानी कि डेथ, i यानी कि इमिग्रेशन, e यानी कि एमिग्रेशन. याद रखिए, आई से जैसे इंपोर्ट होता है उसी तरह इमिग्रेशन मतलब कितने जानवर उस पॉपुलेशन में नए उस स्पीशीज़ के आए. ई मतलब एमिग्रेशन यानी ई से एक्सपोर्ट, ई से इमिग्रेशन मतलब कि कितने जानवर उस पॉपुलेशन के वहाँ से बाहर चले गए. तो किसी भी समय में उस पॉपुलेशन की नंबर क्या है, मीन्स इफ़ यू वांट टू स्टडी द नंबर ऑफ रिजल्टेंट नंबर ऑफ एनिमल्स लेफ्ट इन अ पॉपुलेशन, वी विल काउंट इट एज how much was it before n0 plus the new birth taken b minus the death, obviously it will be minus, plus I the new entry of animals minus c the one who left, the animals who left. That will give you the resultant animal at any time. So population dynamics refers to all the changes in the number, size, sex and age that takes place in a population during given time period. So student, if I ask you all an objective question in exam that population dynamics refers to all the changes, or you get this question in competitive examinations, population dynamics refers to all the changes in the dash, dash and dash that take place in population during a given time period, you know what to fill first. Second, if you are asked what will be the formula for n1, that is number of individuals at time 1, then you can say this. Now the four main factors that control populations is natality. It is the first principle involved in determining population dynamics of any species, that is estimating the number of animals born each year. The number of young born in a given unit of time is referred to as a birth rate or natality. पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स का सबसे पहला और मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट फैक्टर जो है जिसको हम लोग पैरामीटर स्टडी करते हैं पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स स्टडी करने में, वो है नेटालिटी. नेटालिटी यानी कि बर्थ रेट. इसका मतलब होता है कितने नए एनिमल्स उस समय में जन्म लिए हैं. सो द नंबर ऑफ यंग बॉर्न इन अ गिवन यूनिट ऑफ टाइम इज रेफर्ड टू एज द बर्थ रेट और नेटालिटी. Now birth rate is difficult to measure, although it is the most important factor. It looks easy, but you all can guess why birth rate is rather difficult to be measured in wild animals. In fact, all the population dynamic parameters are rather difficult in wild animals compared to the domestic. और आप लोग समझ सकते हैं क्यों. Birth rate is difficult to measure because they are influenced on yearly basis by number of females of breeding age in a population, natural food condition during previous year, mating habits of species, population density. पहला factor, the first parameter we studied about population dynamics was natality or birth rate. The second parameter, important parameter of population dynamics is mortality, and it refers to the number of animals that die during a given period of time. Mortality is of two types: compensatory mortality, additive mortality. How many types of mortality are there? Compensatory mortality, additive mortality. What is compensatory and what is additive mortality? Before moving on further to the next parameter of population dynamics, which are emigration and immigration, I would like to tell you all that suppose करिए कि कोई दो तरह के mortality के कारण ऐसे हैं. Say suppose in 1 year death due to disease condition was 25 in a population, 25% in a population, while death due to, say suppose any natural calamity was 15% in 1 year. While if suppose second year, in another year, the death due to disease condition becomes 35%, while there is no death due to any natural calamity, means overall death will remain constant 35% in both the years. It means in this case mortality due to one cause is compensated by the mortality due to another. This is called as compensatory mortality, whereby the net mortality remains the same. I repeat it once again. If suppose say in an year 2020, in any population, if death due to a disease, any disease condition was 25% and death due to any natural calamity was 10%. And suppose same population, the death in next year due to the same two factors, that is disease condition and natural calamities, are 35% and 0% respectively. It means that although overall death percentage remains the same, it varies for the two factors, but overall remains the same. It means the mortality percentage due to one cause is supplemented by the other or compensated by the other, and this is called as compensatory mortality. But if suppose in another case there is no such compensation, that is it gets added on. So if suppose in the same in a different population in the same year or in different year, death due to disease condition is 25% and death due to natural calamity is 10%, and in another year death due to disease condition is 35% and due to natural calamity is say 5%, the overall death will increase to 40%. So in this condition they are not compensating, but they are adding to the mortality, leading to increased percentage in mortality. This is called as additive mortality. Let me tell you, in most of the cases, as you can understand, the mortality due to the two reasons are rarely compensated. They are additive in nature. The two last factors through which, for very important parameters for studying the population dynamics, are emigration and immigration. So we studied 4 parameters. First was natality, second was mortality, third immigration, fourth emigration. I have already suggested to you all how to remember it. Emigration related to export and immigration related to import. Emigration similar to export, मतलब export मतलब बाहर सामान बेचना, उसी तरह emigration मतलब जब जानवर उस पॉपुलेशन को छोड़कर कहीं बाहर चला जाता है. तो आप समझ सकते हैं कि इससे पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स में फ़र्क पड़ेगा. जिस एज ग्रुप का एनिमल उस पॉपुलेशन से गया है, अगर कम नंबर में है तो इट इज़ नेग्लिजिबल, लेकिन अगर हर्ड में या झुंड में या ज़्यादा नंबर में गए हैं तो पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स इज़ बाउंड टू बी इफेक्टेड. कैपिटल एन जो है वो चेंज हो जाएगा कैपिटल N1, क्योंकि ई जो है वो अगर ज़्यादा होगा तो कैपिटल N1 घट जाएगा, और उस एज ग्रुप के खासकर जिसके ज़्यादा इमिग्रेशन हुई होगी. उसी तरह इमिग्रेशन से भी पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स बदलेगा. सिमिलरली इमिग्रेशन इज ऑल्सो बाउंड टू चेंज द पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स डिपेंडिंग अपॉन द एज और नंबर ऑफ एनिमल्स coming inside the herd or population. A very important term related to these two last parameters of population dynamics is dispersal. Dispersal is defined as the movement of an animal away from the area where it was born into a new area. In wildlife, dispersal is a regular phenomenon. So you might get a question, define dispersal. Is it a regular phenomenon in wildlife? Yes, it is. So it is also going to change the population dynamics. Now there is one important fact with respect to this dispersal which I came across. I wanted to share it. Dispersal is observed more in males, and males disperse more farther than female. It might be to prevent the inbreeding. Now factors affecting wildlife population can be divided into 2 types. So all the wildlife population dynamics which we studied was mortality, natality, and then immigration and emigration. They are of 2 types, density dependent and density independent. If any of the population parameter depends upon the population density, they are called as density dependent, and if any of the population parameter does not depend on density, it is called as density independent. As you see, density dependent factors are those which act in proportion to the number of animals per acre per square mile. You know, it is the population density. मतलब कि अगर कोई पॉपुलेशन डायनेमिक्स या पॉपुलेशन पैरामीटर जो है, जो कि घनत्व उस पॉपुलेशन के घनत्व पे डिपेंड करता है, तो उसको हम लोग डेंसिटी डिपेंडेंट फैक्टर बोलेंगे. You all know that mortality and natality are density dependent factors. How? Certain diseases are density dependent factors. How? If the population density in an area is more, अगर आबादी किसी भी जानवर की घनत्व ज़्यादा है, so if the population density in an area is more, they are bound to struggle for food and resources. And so obviously natality will be reduced, mortality will be increased. Similarly, certain disease conditions which are contagious or infectious in nature are also dependent upon population density, because they will increase, the chances of its spread will increase due to density, population density. So these factors related to population dynamics are actually density dependent factors. Opposite to it is density independent factors, which operate independently of population density. Example, drought, flood, storm, hurricane. You know, they don't ask what is the population density. They are not dependent. ये घनत्व पे नहीं है, ये कहीं भी हो सकता है, और ये population dynamics को इफेक्ट करता है. अगर किसी जगह पे ड्रॉट आया है, फ्लड आया है, स्टॉर्म आया है, हरिकेन आया है, तो उससे पॉपुलेशन की नंबर सिवियरली इफेक्टेड होती है. सो दीज फैक्टर्स आर डेंसिटी इंडिपेंडेंट फैक्टर्स. Now, the next topic we will be studying is population growth, types of population growth curves. But before that, few terms which I came across, I took it from nature.com, and so I have also mentioned the source. So with due courtesy, so I also would like to describe these terms. What is biodiversity? As the name suggests, diversity in the biotic component, that is the living organisms, is called biodiversity. The variety of type of organisms, habitats and ecosystem on earth or any particular place is called biodiversity. The second term is exponential growth. It is very important. You will come to know that mainly there are two types of growth. Generally population के दो तरह के growth होते हैं, exponential growth और logarithmic growth. The first one, as the name suggests, when the continuous increase or decrease in population occurs, in which the change, I don't know from where I got it, it's anyways, in which continuous increase or decrease in population, in which the change of rate of change is proportional to the number of individuals at any stage, it is called exponential. The third term is age structure, the distribution of individual among age classes within a population. जब हम किसी population को उसको age के हिसाब से बांटते हैं, we call it as age structure. When we divide the population into different ages, lifespan, how long an individual lives, you know, it is but a very common term. Fecundity, the rate at which an individual produces offspring, related to fertility, prolificacy. Density, it is the number of individual per unit area or volume, referring to a substance, the weight per unit volume. Carrying capacity is an important term. I have written IMP for important. So do remember it. You might get in definition what is the carrying capacity. Carrying capacity, friends, when you go for any webinar meeting in few of the Zoom, they say 100 limit has been reached, so sorry, we cannot give you entry. The host does not give you entry and you are not able to attend the webinar. So the carrying capacity of that webinar is 100. Similarly, the nature also has its carrying capacity for the animals, for the human, for its inhabitants. कोई भी जगह पे नेचर का उसके रिसोर्सेज का एक पर्टिकुलर कैरिंग कैपेसिटी है. इट इज़ द मैक्सिमम लिमिट टू विच इट कैन लेट द ह्यूमन और एनिमल सस्टेन. उससे ज़्यादा जानवर या आदमी उस जगह पर नहीं इन टोटल रह सकते हैं. सो द नंबर ऑफ इंडिविजुअल्स इन अ पॉपुलेशन दैट द रिसोर्स ऑफ अ हैबिटेट कैन सपोर्ट the asymptote or the plateau of the logistic and other sigmoid equation for population growth, not making it rather difficult. I would like to say the carrying capacity is the maximum limit maximum limit a particular place or the natural resources of a place sustains with respect to the number of animals or human is called the carrying capacity. Logistic equation is the second type. One was equation exponential, another is a logistic equation, mathematical expression for a particular sigmoid growth curve in which the percentage rate of increase decreases in linear fashion as the population size increases. We will be studying it right now. Native species, a species that occurs in particular region or ecosystem by natural process rather than by accidental or deliberate introduction by human. So if suppose an animal or a particular plant species is the natural inhabitant of that place, we call it as native species. In few of the fields you find the weeds like batua growing by itself without any seeds or anything, so you say that it is the native species of that place. In a pond or particular area of particular, you will have a particular animals always there without any of the human intervention, and that they are the natural species. And introduced species in contrast to it are those species which are actually introduced or deliberately into that regions. And demography is the study of age structure and growth rate of a population. Now coming to the main heading, that is population growth curve. It is very important. Two types of population growth patterns occur depending upon specific environmental condition. I would like to add to it कि एनवायरमेंटल कंडीशन के साथ साथ टाइप ऑफ पॉपुलेशन पे भी डिपेंड करता हुआ दो तरह के ग्रोथ कर्व पाए जाते हैं. एक एक्सपोनेंशियल ग्रोथ कर्व पाया जाता है जिसको हम लोग जे कर्व भी बोलते हैं. ये एक आइडियल अनलिमिटेड एनवायरनमेंट में होता है जिसमें कि अनलिमिटेड ग्रो करता है पॉपुलेशन, जिसको कि हम लोग एक्सपोनेंशियल ग्रोथ कर्व बोलते हैं. वहीं दूसरा तरह का होता है लॉजिस्टिक ग्रोथ कर्व, जिसको एस कर्व बोलते हैं या सिग्मोइड कर्व बोलते हैं. इट अकर्स व्हेन एनवायरमेंटल प्रेशर स्लो द रेट ऑफ ग्रोथ. अगर हम लोग ह्यूमन की बात करें तो जे और द मैमल दे शो एस कर्व, और एनी वाइल्ड एनिमल्स दे जनरली शो एस कर्व वेयर बाय it increases to a limit and then starts decreasing as soon as the carrying capacity is reached. मतलब एक लिमिट के बाद the growth rate is reduced, stopped. It is called as a logistic growth curve. Now exponential growth curve, few features: unlimited, J-shaped curve. Maximum growth rate for a given population is known as, now an important term, the maximum growth rate for a given population is known as its biotic potential. So if you are asked what is the biotic potential, कोई भी population का जो maximum growth rate होता है वो उसका biotic potential है. Now the second type of curve is logistic growth curve. It occurs when the population number begins to approach a finite carrying capacity. मतलब इसमें infinite growth नहीं होता है, unlike exponential. जैसे मैंने बताया carrying capacity के बाद वो घटना शुरू हो जाता है, या reduced होगा या constant हो जाएगा. Sigmoid growth curve, its plateau at carrying capacity is denoted by K. First one, now in detail, the same thing, the source www.biologydiscussion.com with courtesy. Type 1 is J-shaped curve. In this case of J-shaped form, the population grows exponentially, and after attaining the peak value, the population may abruptly crash. This increase in population is continued till large amount of food material exists in the habitat. So in case of J-shaped curve or exponential curve, it is rather unlimited, but it might happen कि at a particular place, at a particular point, it suddenly stops the growth or it crashes. After some time, due to increase in population size, the food habitat becomes limited, which ultimately results in decreased population size. It is mainly observed in many insect population, which shows explosive increase in number during the rainy season, followed by their disappearance at the end of the season. So here get the example of exponential or the J-shaped curve. पहला टाइप ऑफ कर्व है जे शेप्ड कर्व, जिसको हम लोग एक्सपोनेंशियल कर्व बोलते हैं, जिसमें जनरली अनलिमिटेड ग्रोथ होता है. अचानक एक पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम के बाद आके हो सकता है वो क्रैश कर जाए, लेकिन उसमें इंक्रीज के बाद कभी डिक्रीज ग्रोथ नहीं होती है सिग्मोइड की तरह, और वो जनरली स्मॉल इंसेक्ट्स में देखने को मिलते हैं, वेरी स्मॉल एनिमल्स में, इंसेक्ट्स में देखने को मिलते हैं. और ये जो उसका इक्वेशन होता है जे शेप्ड कर्व का, वो होता है dn/dt इज इक्वल टू Rn. दैट इज द रेट ऑफ डिफरेंशियल. This is the differentiation, dn/dt is equal to Rn. So rate of increase of population is rather dependent upon R, the biotic potential, and N, the population size. Now the level beyond which no major increase occurs is referred to as saturation level or carrying capacity, which I have already said. In the last phase, new organisms are almost equal to the number of dying individual, and thus there is no more increase in population size. जो दूसरा टाइप ऑफ ग्रोथ कर्व है वो है एस शेप्ड सिग्मोइड ग्रोथ फॉर्म, विच इज रिप्रेजेंटेड बाय फॉलोइंग इक्वेशन dn/dt is equal to Rn into k minus n upon k, which is equal to Rn into 1 minus n upon k, where dn/dt is the rate of change in population size, R is the biotic potential, N is the population size, k minus n upon k or 1 minus n upon k is for environmental resistance. When a few organisms are introduced into an area, the population increase is very slow in the beginning. That is positive acceleration phase. These are the phases of sigmoid curve. Just now we will be explaining it first of all theory and then by graph. इस एक्सपोनेंशियल ग्रोथ कर्व में ऐसा कोई फेज नहीं होता, वो कंटिन्यूअस इंक्रीज करता है. लेकिन ये जो सिग्मॉइड कर्व है या एस शेप्ड कर्व है, उसमें पहले पॉजिटिव एक्सेलरेशन फेज या लैग फेज देखने को मिलता है, जबकि ग्रोथ थोड़ा स्लो होता है. इन द मिडिल फेज पॉपुलेशन इंक्रीज बिकम्स वेरी रैपिड, जबकि ग्रोथ फास्ट भागता है, जिसको हम लोग लोगैरिथमिक फेज बोलते हैं. एंड फाइनली इन द लास्ट फेज पॉपुलेशन इंक्रीज स्लो डाउन, जिसको हम लोग नेगेटिव एक्सेलरेशन फेज बोलते हैं, और वो तब तक चलता है अंटिल एन इक्विलिब्रियम इज अटेन्ड, around which the population size fluctuates according to variability of the environment. The level beyond which no major increase can occur is referred to as saturation level or carrying capacity. In the last phase, new organisms are almost equal to the number of dying organisms, and thus there is no more increase in the population size. The S-shaped sigmoid growth form is represented by the following equation. This is the equation for S-shaped sigmoid growth curve. As you can see, in this case, the growth rate is dependent upon the carrying capacity K, the biotic potential R, and N, the population size. But in this case, it is, in case of the sigmoid growth J-shaped curve, it is dependent only upon the R and N, not on K. So these are the two curves. As you can see, this is the J-shaped curve. So if you're asked what are the different types of population growth, you can say they are basically of two types: J-shaped or exponential, S-shaped or sigmoid. So if you're asked what is the basic difference, you say that in case of J-shaped curve or exponential growth, it increases infinitely, after which it might crash. But up till that, there is no log phase or lag phase or deceleration phase. It increases infinitely. While in case of S-shaped curve, you have a lag phase where the growth is slow. You have a log phase where the growth is very fast, and then you have a negative acceleration phase whereby it almost becomes constant, and then it increases or decreases at the equilibrium depending upon the carrying capacity K. This J-shaped curve is not dependent upon the carrying capacity, as it increases infinitely. Let me tell you, when practically most of the population show this curve, that is S-shaped curve, because after a limit, definitely the carrying capacity of the resource of the nature will be reached. There will be a shortage of food supply, and then there cannot be an increase beyond that. While this J-shaped curve is noticed in case of insects, so there was an example of this and this both as we discussed it. Now carrying capacity, this term is encountered at many places, so let us see. Carrying capacity is of two types: biological carrying capacity, sociological carrying capacity. Let me tell you all, this biological carrying capacity is the carrying capacity of the nature or the natural resources, and sociological carrying capacity is the carrying capacity with respect to human. Means how much can we tolerate the animals, and biological carrying capacity is how much can the nature tolerate. So these two are very, very important. Now if you are asked define each of them, which one is generally higher, you know, define, if you compare both of them, biological carrying capacity and sociological carrying capacity, generally biological carrying capacity is higher than the sociological carrying capacity. Means the limit of maximum animals nature can tolerate or sustain is called biological carrying capacity, and the maximum number of animals we can sustain or tolerate, we human, are called sociological carrying capacity. Which carrying capacity will increase and which will decrease when the suburban sprawl puts human into direct contact with wildlife? Say suppose this is witnessed most of the times when we suppose invade the habitat of wild animals. Due to increasing population density, we are definitely having human intervention and human population settled almost everywhere. So when it starts at, say suppose at a place which was earlier inhabited by wildlife, you know, although the biological carrying capacity will increase, the sociological carrying capacity will decrease. Why biological carrying capacity will increase? because the wild animals in the vicinity of human will be supported by the natural food as well as the food waste and all from the human. But then because the human has now settled to the nearby, it will try to reduce the habitat of the wildlife, and so sociological carrying capacity will decrease. The disparity between, it is a very important question, the disparity between sociological carrying capacity and biological carrying capacity increases when, you get the answer here, increases when the suburban sprawl puts human into direct contact with wildlife, and how I have just now explained. Now coming to the term captive breeding, it is very very important. This captive breeding, as the name suggests, is breeding in captivity. मतलब उसको हम लोग जू में या एक जगह पे कैद करके अगर ब्रीडिंग करवाते हैं तो उसको कैप्टिव ब्रीडिंग बोलते हैं. You all might have guessed कि what is the utility of this captive breeding. When you know that you need to produce large number of animals because it is supposed facing extinction, or it needs to be conserved, or maybe because it is no more economically viable to be sustained outside, you actually go for captive breeding and keep few of its animals. But in most of the cases, captive breeding is an important, very important tool to maintain the population size of an animal and to prevent it from extinction. It is the process of maintaining plant or animal in controlled environments such as wildlife reserve, zoo, botanical garden, and other conservation facilities. It's a synonymous captive propagation. So if you say, are captive breeding and captive propagation same, you will say yes. Purpose, why do we go for captive breeding? Question, if suppose you are asked this question, अगर आपको पूछा जाए तो आंसर है to help species that are being threatened by human activities such as habitat loss, fragmentation, overhunting or fishing, pollution, predation, disease and parasitism. मतलब किसी भी वजह से अगर उसकी पॉपुलेशन साइज थ्रेटेंड है, उसकी सर्वाइवेबिलिटी थ्रेटेंड है, तो आपको उसको अलग से कैप्टिविटी में रख के ब्रीडिंग करवा के उसके नंबर को इंक्रीज करके आप उसको वापस से वाइल्ड में छोड़ देते हैं, या फिर आप उसको जहाँ भी कंजर्व करते हैं वहाँ रखते हैं. इन मोस्ट ऑफ द केसेस दे आर लेट इनटू द वाइल्ड अगेन टू मेंटेन द पॉपुलेशन, to save a species from extinction. So in nutshell you say, now what are the challenges of captive breeding? In breeding, क्योंकि जब आप उसको captive breeding कराते हैं तो genetic variability उतनी नहीं रह जाएगी जितनी कि wild में है, तो in breeding depression के chances हैं. So you get a question, how? Explain all. So the challenges, what are the challenges of captive breeding? Inbreeding, genetic diversity, genetics, outbreeding, domestication or adaptation. So these are the challenges or constraints with captive breeding. When you keep an animal for captive breeding, the number of animals will be decreased, and so the chances of inbreeding will be increased. Similarly, the genetic diversity is reduced, and when genetic diversity is reduced, the chances of heterosis also decreases. Other reasons being genetics, outbreeding and domestication or adaptation. A captive bred animal might not adapt when put back in the wild, or a wild animal might not respond equally to captive breeding. So these are the reasons or challenges with captive breeding. What are the methods used in captive breeding? Artificial insemination, cryopreservation, cloning and interspecific pregnancy. Now the types of population growth curve, well, फिर से आ गया था. Effective population size, this is very important term. Before that, pardon me, I want to remove the two slides. Yes, they show a repetition. Exactly. Now coming to effective population size, slide show from current. It is very important term. Before going into it, let us discuss there are two terms, census population and effective population size. Well friends, they two are equally important. Census population means what we calculate through the census. जनगणना से या पशु गणना से जो हम लोग कैलकुलेट करते हैं टोटल नंबर ऑफ एनिमल्स, वो हम लोग कहते हैं सेंसस पॉपुलेशन. लेकिन इफेक्टिव पॉपुलेशन साइज जो होता है वो ब्रीडिंग के संदर्भ में वो पॉपुलेशन साइज को कहते हैं जो कि वाइबल है फॉर ब्रीडिंग पर्पस. Means that it is the number of population calculated on the basis of breeding animal. It is very important because even when the census population is high, it might be at the risk of extinction due to decreased effective population size. So NE and NC needs to be equally large for the population to not be extinct or threatened. इससे रिलेटेड एक बात है, सपोज करिए कि एक ऐसा एनिमल का समूह है जिसका कि पॉपुलेशन साइज अच्छा खासा है, फिर भी उसको स्टडी करके पाया गया कि वो थ्रेटेंड है या उसकी सर्वाइवेबिलिटी डिफ़िकल्ट है क्योंकि उसकी इफ़ेक्टिव पॉपुलेशन साइज़ कम है। मतलब उसमें मेल और फीमेल के जो नंबर्स हैं वो जो है वो या तो मेल ज़्यादा है या तो फीमेल ज़्यादा है। हमेशा याद रखिए इफ़ेक्टिव पॉपुलेशन साइज़ जो होता है वो सेंसस पॉपुलेशन के लगभग बराबर तब होगा जब मेल और फीमेल की संख्या लगभग बराबर होगी। कहने का मतलब इसको आप इस तरह से समझ सकते हैं कि अगर 1000 जानवर में 500 मेल और 500 फीमेल है तो उसके प्रोबेबिलिटी ब्रीडिंग की ज़्यादा होगी और इसीलिए उसका नेक्स्ट जनरेशन प्रोजेनी ज़्यादा प्रोड्यूस होगा, इसीलिए उसकी पॉपुलेशन साइज सही मेंटेन रहेगी। सो सिमिलरली आई एम रिपीटिंग इट इन इंग्लिश दैट इफ सपोज the total population of any animal is 1000, and so if the number of male and female are exactly 500 each, it will have maximum chances of survivability because the chances of breeding will be more among male and female and production of progeny will be more because equal number of male and female are there. So what I mean to say is that effective population size is what you ideally get from an idealized population of breeding animals. मतलब effective population size आपका actually टोटल पॉपुलेशन का वो इफेक्टिव पार्ट है जो कि ब्रीडिंग में कंट्रीब्यूट करेगा। तो आप समझ सकते हैं कि टोटल पॉपुलेशन अगर ज़्यादा भी है लेकिन अगर उसमें ब्रीडिंग वाले एनिमल्स की संख्या जो वायबल है ब्रीडिंग के लिए उसके चांसेस कम है तो वो उसमें एक्सटिंक्शन के चांसेस होंगे। Effective population size is one of the most important parameters in the population genetics and conservation biology. It translates census size of a real population into the size of an idealized population, showing the same rate of loss of genetic diversity as the real population under study. Although several conceptually different types of NE can be distinguished, but most commonly used one are those based on loss of genetic diversity in breeding and through genetic drift variance. When we go for studying effective population size, there are two types of effective population size, या फिर हम लोग उसको दो तरह से भी calculate effective population size on two types: inbreeding effective population size and variance effective population size. If line in a population is 110, the census population NC, but the effective population size NE is different as it includes the number of breeding adults in the population. Now, inbreeding effective population size. There are two types of effective population size. Just a minute. Yeah. This effective population size for some common situation sources as written here with due courtesy. First one is, as I told to you all, inbreeding effective population size. So just now we came to know that population sizes can be basically of two types: census population size and effective population size. Then we explained that effective population size is mainly measured as of two types: inbreeding effective population size and variance effective population size. Coming to the first one, inbreeding effective population size, calculation of NEF ideally requires pedigree data. However, you can estimate the inbreeding effective population size by calculating the harmonic mean of the population over time from the founding generation to the penultimate generation. The symbol T represents the number of generation for which we have population size of the data, and N0 is the size of the founding population, N1 is the size of population after one generation, and so on, and Nt minus 1 is the size of population after one generation. So if suppose in T minus 1 generations you have, if suppose in T minus 1 generation, suppose you want to know the total effective population size on the basis of effective population size in 0, 1 and so on up till T minus 1 generations. So when you find the harmonic mean, you get the effective population size over those generations. Variance effective population size is the second type. It refers to the size of an ideal population that would accumulate the same amount of variance in allele frequencies as the population of interest. Thus, this effective population size indicates how rapidly allele frequencies are likely to change. This is important because it also affects how rapidly isolated population diverge from one another under genetic drift. Again, the symbol T represents the number of generations for which we have population size data. N1 is the size of population after one generation, and NT is the size of population after current generation. This is the variance effective population size. So what is the difference in case of inbreeding effective population size? We take the, to find the effective population size, you take the population from N0 to NT minus 1 generation, while in case of variance effective population size, you take the harmonic mean from first to T generation. Now, coming to the next slide, and I do it from current. Yeah. This is the formula maximum used in most of the cases to calculate. It will be applicable for the BVSC students to calculate the effective population size. This following correction can be used in each generation if operational sex ratios are not 1:1, and we know that in most of the cases it is not. So suppose you are asked, right, calculate the effective population size given number of male is NM and number of female is NF. Effective population size N is equal to 4 NM NF upon NM plus NF. This is the formula most widely used to calculate the effective population size. NE is equal to 4 NM into NF upon NM plus NF. NM is the number of breeding males and NF is the number of breeding females. So you can see from this formula that if I say that this is the formula, generalized formula, although just now I taught to you all about this variance effective population size, inbreeding effective population size, which you use depending upon the data, but maximum cases for sex ratio not equal to 1:1, which is, you know, is the general case, you go for this 4 NM NF upon NM plus NF. So if you are said what is the generalized formula used, you can say this, and if you are said what are the different methods for calculating effective population size, you say all these things. Okay, so coming back to here, you can see from this formula that effective population size will be greater, more will be the effective population size. The effective population size NE will be greater for NM and NF being equal to each other. They are the few cases, special cases for effective population size. This is the formula of effective population size for autosomal inheritance. This is the formula of effective population size for X-linked inheritance. This is the formula of effective population size for Y-linked inheritance. This is the formula for effective population size for maternally transmitted organelles. We do not need it for BVSC students. Now coming to the next terminology in population related to this wildlife populations is ART, assisted reproductive technology. This assisted reproductive technologies, as the name suggests, is the reproductive technology which are used to assist in the reproductive techniques to augment or to support its fertility, or to increase the number of progeny, to help if suppose it is infertile. This ART is used in human, in domesticated animal, in wild animals as well, to increase the number of population size, to increase the fertility and so on. It involves procedure like in vitro fertilization, intracytoplasmic sperm injection, cryopreservation, fertility medication. So as you can see, this ART has limited application as far as wild animals is concerned. ART, assisted reproductive technology, is far from comprehensive solution to the problem of a species and their habitats. Concretely used in certain circumstances can help prevent highly endangered species. Because of its cost factor and economic viability and many other reasons, ART is rather very limited in wild animals. The creation of a gene bank that allows the preservation of material of high genetic value obtained from animal centers, park meeting, is the second objective of this program. This ART was what I got from some website I must have mentioned. So this I got, which showed that how it has limited resources or application in case of wild animals. This assisted reproductive technology. So it is, so for the students who are online with me, students, just write it in one sentence: limited application in wild animals. Although it is throughout the world, the condition is so, especially in developing countries like India. Okay. Although limited conservation of wild animals and is rarely used in few cases to preserve highly endangered species. Fine. So again from current slideshow, but I just wanted to explain to you all what was the assisted reproductive technology. Now coming to current slideshow. The next topic which we'll be discussing is conservation. It is a very important topic with respect to wildlife population dynamics. As the name suggests, the word conservation, let me tell you there are two words, preservation and conservation. When we keep anything as such, it is preservation, and when we increase it in quality or quantity, we call it as conservation. मतलब जब हम लोग जानवर को बस जितना नंबर है या जिस स्टेट में उसको हम लोग प्रिजर्व करना चाहते हैं आगे के लिए, तो वो प्रिजर्वेशन है. लेकिन अगर हम लोग उसको अपग्रेड भी करना चाहते हैं या उसकी क्रॉसिंग से या उसके जेनेटिक पोटेंशियल को बढ़ाना भी चाहते हैं, तो वो प्रिजर्वेशन नहीं बल्कि वो कंजर्वेशन, उससे एक स्टेप आगे हो जाता है. सो वी कैन से दैट कंजर्वेशन इज अ वे हायर दैन प्रिजर्वेशन. नाउ द थ्रेट टू जेनेटिक डाइवर्सिटी, व्हाई द नीड टू कंजर्व अराइजेस. हम लोग क्यों कंजर्व करना चाहते हैं या फिर ज़रूरत क्या होती है. फर्स्ट, ब्रीडिंग सिस्टम एंड ब्रीड डाइल्यूशन, जोग्राफिकल रीऑर्गेनाइजेशन, purpose-based farming system, economic viability, modern agricultural practices, others like increased livestock population. Due to breeding system and breed dilutions, because of methods like upgrading and crossbreeding, which we need to fulfill the demand of increasing population, the indigenous population or indigenous breeds are highly at threat. So we have to conserve them. Geographical reorganization, their habitat is disturbed many a times due to many geographical reorganization, separation of states or nations, etc., which leads to threatening of many important breeds of animals. Purpose-based farming system, say suppose in any area whereby no more the wool is required, so the sheep specially reared for wool will slowly and gradually start decreasing in number or threatened because it will not be reared anymore. So this is called the effect of purpose-based farming system on the survivability. Now economic viability, we will not go for any desi or nondescript or indigenous animal which shows lesser productivity. Why? Because it will not be viable economically. Modern agricultural practices, say suppose now we go for tilling by mechanized, the agriculture is mostly mechanized, so most of the drought animals are highly at risk or their population is endangered. So this is called as the effect. This is thus how modern agricultural practices is threatening the genetic diversity. And last, others like increased livestock population, where the population increases, it pressures, it creates a pressure, it is bound to affect the survivability. According to FAO, the survival risk of the breed should be studied when the breed population size reaches 5,000 breedable female and the total population of 10,000. This is very important. We get in objective questions also or multiple choice in various competitive examinations like NET and all. What if, according to FAO, the survival risk of breed should be studied when the breed population size reaches dash. It is 5,000 breedable females and total population of 10,000. Now this is the data I got from Animal Breeding by S.S. Tomar sir with lot of courtesy textbook, book with immense, so much of good content. So this is where I got it. It is very important. It is the population size in 1,000 for consideration as endangered status of a breed. So it is the population size in 1,000 for any animal to be considered as endangered species of a breed under Indian condition for different species as suggested by NBAGR. I would like you all to have a rough idea about it, so because you might get in different competitive examinations. So you see, in case of cattle, it is normal when it is the population is greater than 25 and greater than, so these are the different normal, insecure, vulnerable, endangered and critical. So you see, generally when it is less than 100 it becomes critical, and in case of cattle it is called critical when the rate decreases less than 2, as has been mentioned over here. The population size in thousands for consideration of endangered status by a breed under Indian condition, for a breed under Indian condition for different species. Now, methods of conservation of ANGR means animal genetic resources. There are different type of conservation. Broadly, it can be divided into in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. The first one, in situ conservation, it involves the maintenance of live population of animal in their adaptive environment, original and natural conditions. So when you keep the animal in their own habitat or environment, we call it as in situ conservations. So now there are two aspects of in situ conservation, active and passive. So suppose you are trying to conserve the animals via various ICR institute in the home track, maybe under different AICRP, they try to conserve it at the farmer's doorstep, it is in situ conservation. Now in case of in situ, there is active and passive. It is further of two types. Active conservation is equivalent to breed development through animal breeding program. Various NGOs, BIFE, etc. also intend to increase the breed or develop the breed through animal breeding program. So they not only try to conserve it but also increase it through increase its potential through breeding programs. So they come under active in situ conservation. And suppose through AICRP we try to increase the breed, we also do it through AICRP and all. And suppose through ICR institutes we are just conserving it, we are not trying to increase or breed develop through animal breeding program, we are keeping it in the home track, we go for a passive in situ conservation. मीन्स इन सिटू कंजर्वेशन पहला टाइप है कंजर्वेशन का, दूसरा एक्स सिटू है. इन सिटू वो टाइप है जबकि हम लोग एनिमल को उसके होम टाउन में ही या उसके एडेप्टेड एनवायरनमेंट में कंजर्व करते हैं. वो दो तरह का होता है, एक्टिव और पैसिव. अगर हम लोग उसके ब्रीड को डेवलप भी करते हैं आगे तो एक्टिव बोलते हैं, लेकिन अगर हम लोग उसको जस्ट का तस्ट प्रिजर्व करते हैं, वी डोंट गो फॉर एनिमल ब्रीडिंग प्रोग्राम्स जस्ट फॉर कंजर्वेशन, वी कॉल इट एज passive. But this active and passive has both got to be in their adaptive environment to be considered under in situ conservation. Now coming to ex situ conservation. Ex situ conservation is the second type. There are many animals which are economically unviable and they will not be conserved at their home track, and so they would be lost if ex situ conservation is not followed. It means that many a times the farmers, the animal owners or the farm or the herd might not be able to maintain that animal in their hometown. In that case, we go for keeping the animals away from the adaptive environment for the sake of conserving it. This is called ex situ conservation. All those zoo, the parks and different type of breeding parks like snake park, breeding parks, etc., zoo, they all come under safari gardens, they all come under ex situ conservation, because there you take out the animal from its adaptive environment, you keep it somewhere else to conserve it. Ex situ conservation is of two types further, in vivo and in vitro. In vivo, as the name suggests, in natural live animals, that if and examples are breed, safari, park, etc. Zoo, they are all the type of in vivo. So an important question is, zoo is an example of, so it will be in vivo ex situ conservation. Why ex situ? Because it is away from its adaptive environment, and in vivo because it is in live animal. The other type of ex situ is in vitro. So when you go for cryopreservation, that is at very low temperature preservation of sperm and oocyte of highly precious animal, cryopreservation of embryo of highly precious animal or endangered animal, storage of DNA of highly precious or endangered animal in order to conserve it, because you are conserving in either case away from its home track, it is ex situ. But because none of these three methods, cryopreservation of embryo, sperm and DNA, is in live animal, we call it in vitro. So just now you came to know that conservation is of two types, in vivo, in situ and ex situ. In situ is of two types, active and passive. Ex situ is of two types, in vivo and in vitro. Last term is protected areas. As the name suggests, protected or conservation areas are the locations which receive protection because of their recognized natural, ecological or cultural values. There are several kinds of protected areas which vary by level of protection depending on enabling laws of each country or the regulation of the international organizations involved. A protected area is clearly defined geographical space recognized, dedicated and managed through legal and other effective means to achieve the long-term conservation of nature with associated ecosystem service and cultural values. It is the definition given by 2008 IUCN. Example, biosphere reserve, national park and wildlife sanctuaries, they all come under protected areas. ऐसे एरिया जिसमें हम लोग प्रोटेक्ट करने या कंजर्व करने की कोशिश करते हैं, वो क्लियरली डिफाइंड लॉ के थ्रू क्लियरली डिफाइंड एरिया है, जो कि जिसको कि कानून ने मान्यता दी हुई है कंजर्व करने के लिए एनिमल्स को, हम लोग उसको कहेंगे प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया। 3 तरह के प्रोटेक्टेड एरियाज हैं। पहला है वाइल्ड लाइफ सैंक्चुरी। डिफरेंस बिटवीन वाइल्ड लाइफ सैंक्चुरी, बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व एंड नेशनल पार्क। It is a natural area reserved by governmental or private agency for the protection of particular species. Area is designed, पहला wildlife sanctuary. The wildlife sanctuary जो होता है वो एक ऐसा एरिया है जिसको कि गवर्नमेंट या प्राइवेट एजेंसी ने पर्टिकुलर स्पीशीज़ को प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए एंटाइटल किया है। Only animals are conserved, could be private property also, outside activities are allowed. It comes under the category called protected areas declared under Wildlife Protection Act 1972 और इसको टाइप 4 प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया कहा जाता है। ये इम्पॉर्टेंट है। अभी जो हम लोग धीरे धीरे पढ़ेंगे तो मैं आप लोगों से रिक्वेस्ट करूँगी, आई रिक्वेस्ट यू ऑल टू काइंडली कंपेयर द 3, दैट इज वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी, बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व एंड नेशनल पार्क बाय योरसेल्फ. You may get a question. Compare the 3 type of protected areas: wildlife sanctuary, biosphere reserve and national park. Just now we are studying wildlife sanctuary. It is the first kind of protected area we are studying over here. It comes under type 4 category under Wildlife Protection Act 1972. In this only animals are conserved. It could be a private property also. Outside activity is allowed in case of this. It is designated for protection of wild animals. Second is national park. The characteristic of national park is that they are reserve area of land owned by government. It is protected from human exploitation, industrialization and pollution. No cutting, grazing is allowed. Outside species allowed. It comes under the category called protected area declared under Wildlife Protection Act 1972 and it is of category 2 as you have seen. So this is of category 2, this national park, but while wildlife sanctuary was category 4. Now the third one, biosphere reserve. The characteristic of biosphere reserve, notified area which covers a large area of land which may cover multiple national park, sanctuary and reserve. So it is the largest of the 3. That is national park, biosphere reserve and wildlife sanctuary. Biosphere reserve is the largest. It might cover multiple national parks, sanctuaries and reserve. Areas are meant for conservation of biodiversity of a specific area. So it has, and it is so big in area that it has 3 sub areas, that is 3 areas: core, buffer and marginal. No outside species allowed, conservation and research purposes only there. It is internationally recognized within the framework of UNESCO Man and Biosphere Program. Very, very important. The Biosphere Reserve out of 3 is recognized under MAB program. The other 2, wildlife sanctuary and national park, are not. The Ministry of Environment and Forest provide financial assistance to respective state government for conservation of landscape and biological diversity and cultural heritage. So this is the question bank based upon what I taught today. I request you all to try solving it. They are all being dealt in the lecture. This lecture was especially meant for the wildlife population dynamics, wildlife population, which we study as a topic in BVSC and AH. According to the MSB syllabus 2016, we study it in second year AGB course, while in the old syllabus we used to study it in the final year. So it is an important portion. You see the questions. Now this is like an assignment to you all. You get it in the Wikipedia and list all the wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserve and national park in India. So this was my lecture today. Hope it's beneficial to you all. Thank you very much. Thank you, students. We'll be right back with the next lecture. Thank you very much. Okay.